right, I think we are live. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 6 of Just Chatting Seahawks. Man, it's been a couple weeks since we were able to talk last. Um, and you have to forgive me, I haven't been to the barber in like 2 months, man, so forgive the Dragon Ball Z hair. But no, everybody's kind of going through a similar thing right now, right? It's pretty crazy times. It's kind of like um, it's crazy because like menial things they're not menial really, but you take for granted things um, in times like this, or you realize you've taken things for granted for sure. Um, it's crazy, man. Like not having access to the gym, not being able to go to my barber. Um, it really sucks, man. It's crazy. Um, things like uh, what was I thinking about? Uh, there's a couple like jobs and services also that are like that are like maybe like deemed essential that is just crazy right now. Like uh, those people are like feeling overwhelmed right now. So if you're one of those people, um, you know, hats off to you guys. Uh, Appreciate everything you guys are doing. Healthcare providers, first responders, people in food distribution, whatever you do. If everybody's kind of like directly or indirectly impacted by this, right? So it's pretty crazy. Um, Keith 360 feeling not being able to go to the bar, dude. Straight up, bro. Like, shout out to my barber, Aaron. He's out of work right now. I hit him up talking about like doing house calls and stuff. Um, if we get back to some form of normalcy, take care of your barbers for sure. So it's pretty crazy times right now. But anyways, um, yeah, just wanted to tip my cap to those guys. And then Taylor over at 710 ESPN Sally is a good friend of mine. I know his dad's in the hospital right now, so um, just tip my cap to that dude. And uh, my thoughts and prayers are with you, man. So hang in there. But anyways, yeah, it's pretty crazy too. The other thing that I was gonna say about taking things for granted was like not having sports right now, right? Because like the games themselves or the results of those games, they don't really matter in the big picture, guys. Like honestly, they really don't. It's what those sports provide to people that really matters for like the people that make a living off of sports, whether you're playing the game or coaching the game or you're in sports radio, right? Um, but in particular, the fans, like it's really a distraction from the day to day, right? So um, that's why I think it's so important that we have sports in our lives. So, it's crazy for like the first time in my life. This is the only time I can remember not having any form of sports on TV. Like even during 9/11, I feel like the NFL took a break for like a week, and then next week we're right back at it. So like baseball, football, whatever your sport was, it was like a primary coping mechanism, I guess, for whatever the recovery period, if you want to call it that. Um, it's pretty crazy. Anyways, I don't mean to ramble on about the virus. We got a lot to dive into. Um, we're going to be chatting a lot, and we're going to be doing the giveaway at the end. So appreciate you guys joining in. Hope you guys are staying safe. Um, did any? I saw that Russell Wilson was live streaming the Super Bowl 48. Speaking of coronavirus, he said, Anderson, you had to go there, man. Uh, I saw Russell was live streaming one of the Super Bowls yesterday or whatever. I didn't get a chance to rewatch, but yeah, no, I was actually with Will Cornell, Rain City Series, a couple of days ago, and we were watching Super Bowl 48, dude. It's just crazy to me, like how stacked that team was, man. Particularly the defensive line. It's uh, it's pretty crazy, right? Like I don't think it'll ever be that special. Like if this team wins another Super Bowl, I don't think it'll ever quite feel quite like that again. So, um, what up, Mr. Cheever? Appreciate you joining in, man. I saw you were playing Doom Eternal earlier. I jumped in for a little bit. I got to get that game, dude. Anyways, so yeah, just crazy how stacked that team was and how important I think defensive line depth is for if you're going to make a Super Bowl run. So that was just kind of what I was thinking about when I was watching that game. Of course, the whole team was good, right? But the LOB took all the like media, like got all the attention from the media. But I think that front seven was like low key the unsung heroes of that team for sure. So. Anyways, I guess we'll jump into some of the updated Seahawks news um, since since the last time we spoke. I think last time I recorded, Bruce Irvin had been signed. So I think since I last recorded, though, we haven't talked about Quinton Dunbar or Benson Mayola. So we'll get into a little bit of that, but obviously. Um, Before that, the update on Jadeveon Clowney is not that there isn't really an update. So we're kind of all waiting with bated breath on what his decision is going to be. Um, the ball's still in Clowney's court, guys. And I don't think it's really up to the Seahawks brass to force that situation. Um, Even if it may seem like the Seahawks are in desperate need of pass rush, I don't think you ever want your front office to be negotiating with that like desperate sort of mindset. Um, I know it's kind of a controversial topic to talk about because like we've got to absolutely address defensive end. I get it, but um, I just don't think that you want your front office negotiating with like some again desperate mindset. Um, the ironic thing about all this was, when we got Clowney in the beginning, one of the stipulations of the deal was that that we weren't going to be able to franchise tag him, right? That was his call. Um, and I think it's kind of ironic because a franchise tag right now would be like a blessing for him, in my opinion, right? Because you're going to be getting paid an average of your top five positional salary, which is way above what the current rumored offers are to him are. He's got a chance to get back at the market. It would be he'd be 28 or 29 years old, so before he turns 30, and he just gets a chance to reprove himself because between that and the virus going on, not being able to do physicals for other teams, the fact that he wants to play for a contender, I think he's really just limited himself. So I don't know, honestly, like like if you guys are asking me like when we're gonna hear news, like I don't know. It could probably like go beyond the draft. And honestly, like if he pulled a Le'Veon Bell and sat out this year just to keep himself healthy, and then when he was able to, then next year when he's able to go and do physicals with other people or other teams rather, then that might be his like optimal route. I don't know. So the team unfortunately has to like make decisions based on like what's going to go down with Clowney, right? Because if we look at the cap situation right now, they're at about 10.6 million. If you factor in saving money for rookie reserves, practice squad, injury reserve, things like that, they've got about $10.5 million to spend. So Clowney's obviously going to come in higher than that. I mean, you can structure the contract however you want. Bringing in Clowney or an Everson Griffin or whoever is probably going to result in you having to cut another starter. We've talked about the names, like I said, Justin Britt or KJ Wright are your biggest two contracts that you can potentially walk away from right now. So it's just kind of interesting. But, I mean, if we don't get Clowney back as it stands, 5-tech, as you guys see right here, we got Rasheem Green, LJ Collier, Brandon Jackson. Yeah, I think those guys need to get out on the field, but that's a pretty big void there, guys. You're going to have to go into the draft with that probably being your number one priority, and it's going to be very young, very unproven. So it's kind of a sketchy situation with Clowney. If we were able to get him back, then I think it would really help give us full flexibility in approaching the draft, right? Because we've sort of done that with like signing BJ Finney allows us to move on from Britt if we want to. Getting Quinton Dunbar sort of allows us to manipulate the secondary a little bit. Getting Jaron Reed back allows us to not make defensive tackle like the number one priority in the draft. So the Seahawks have done a pretty good job of covering like actual physical voids that were left. But obviously there's room for improvement at a bunch of different spots. But um, you know, I think the biggest glaring need without Clowney is obviously five tech. So, and I'm higher on LJ Collier than most of Seahawks Twitter is. So we'll see what happens. I'm looking forward to the draft this month. I'm glad that's still not delayed. I think sports fans definitely need some form of content right now, and even if the draft is sort of makeshift, and it's going to be kind of crazy to see how they make all that work. I think it's something that we as fans definitely need. We're starving for it, right? So we'll see what happens with Clowney. But the thing about the Benson Mayoa and Bruce Irvin signings, to me, we sort of talked about Bruce Irvin on the last episode of him adding veteran leadership. He's been on a Super Bowl team, so he gets what it takes, and he's learned from the best. So I won't repeat myself on that, but with adding Benson Mayoa, it's important to understand that these guys are, they're adding a few sacks to the team, but we really don't want to chase sacks. We want to chase like pressure rate. As we're kind of finding out, sacks are not necessarily a superficial stat. They're a good stat, but they're not everything, guys. There's better stats to chase, and more importantly, from a team building perspective, you're really not. This is just a stopgap, right? The Mayoa and Urban signings, they cover your Leo rusher position for this 2020 season, but you still have a long-term void there. There's nobody there behind it, as you see. So the other guys are five techs. Maybe Shaquem Griffin is a situational third and long pass rusher. He's not a true Leo. It's just going to be one of those deals that it's just kicking the can. I don't want to say kicking the can down the road, but you're going to need to address it in this year's draft or next year's draft. So, and honestly, I think it's a better situation than they had a year ago before they backed into Jadeveon Clowney. Their process was going to be Ezekiel Ansah on one side, and the Leos were going to be split between Barkevius Mingo and Jacob Martin. So that was their process, guys. Like they were comfortable with going into the season that way. So I think they're in a better position, at least for one season with Urban Mayoa, but long term they still don't have an answer at that, right? So, anyways, just kind of my quick thoughts on the Leo spot. But so Dunbar was the big acquisition, though, right? Per PFF, I think he was like a top three, the second rated cover corner per their metric all of last season, which was, it's crazy to think about considering Seattle gave up a fifth round pick for him. So, tip my cap to John Schneider again, working that magic. But the big question is like, where's he going to fit in? What's the implication of that signing? And so, after thinking about it for a while, because I watched some of his tape, and he's got experience at left cornerback, nickel cornerback, but mostly right cornerback. And so a lot of people are assuming, oh, well, he's here to take Trey Flowers' position, and that might be the case. That might end up being the case, but I don't necessarily think the team is dead set on replacing Trey Flowers with Quinton Dunbar. I think the versatility with Dunbar allows you to take the competition into camp and potentially preseason. If we have it, that is. At this point, we don't even know if we're going to have a season, but just theoretically speaking, you could have Dunbar compete for the right cornerback spot with Trey Flowers. But if Trey takes his leap, right, in the third year, just the same way that Shaquille Griffin did, then you would want to keep Trey Flowers at the right cornerback spot, and you could slide Quinton Dunbar in the nickel spot. And so that's where his flexibility comes into play. And I think, see, I don't think Trey could slide inside. I just don't think I think he's just an outside corner. Physically, I just don't think he can hang with the agility and speed of the modern day slot wide receiver. Whereas Dunbar, I think, can, and Shaquille could too. But he's your best corner, in my opinion. He's going to stay at left cornerback. Um, Trey for me is the right. He's going to play outside or he's going to be on the bench. Whereas, you know, Ugo Amadi, who currently is the projected starter at nickel corner, um, I think he could go back to being the backup free safety now that Tedrick Thompson has been released. So if we're looking at this spot here, we could potentially move Ugo. Why am I messing this up? Screw it. We can move Ugo over to free safety and Dunbar in the nickel. Um, that's the point I was trying to make. So there's flexibility with Dunbar and Amadi, whereas Trey Flowers not so much. Um, that's kind of my thoughts on the acquisition of Dunbar. I'm not ready to give up on Trey Flowers. I see a couple of you guys in the chat saying, "Why have we cut Trey Flowers yet?" Um, I don't know if you're memeing or you're being serious, but as I mentioned before, Pete Carroll really values guys that have starting experience. He's not going to give up on a guy in the first couple years, even if he struggles. Um, he's going to give him the benefit of the doubt, just like Griffin did. He did with Griffin, rather. You guys got to remember, Shaquille Griffin had a decent rookie season, then had a dip in the second year, and we were sort of growing cold on him, and then that third year last year he bounced back. I think Trey Flowers could potentially have the same sort of career trajectory. Um, I don't know for sure, obviously, but I'm not ready to give up on him like some people have. So, Derek, you said I'm not giving up on Flowers. Think he's exceeded expectations. Dunbar probably better though. Yeah, for sure. I think if you are trying to get your best three corners out on the field, though, because I think this team learned their lesson with playing so much base defense, they're going to go back to running more nickel defense, right? And so if you were telling me you need to put your best three corners on the field and where to put them, I would say left cornerback is going to be Shaquille, obviously. Right cornerback would be Trey Flowers, and then nickel corner would be Dunbar. And it's not because I don't think um, Dunbar isn't better than Trey Flowers at right corner. It's just that I think that's your best combination. That you can't really slide Trey Flowers inside. I think he's too his athletic profile, his size. I think he's better matched up on those X receivers rather than the slot guys. Um, but yeah, you said be interested. Derek, you said interested in long-term extensions for Dunbar and Griffin. Yeah, we'll see, man. I think Griffin, if he has a good year, he's gonna ask for the top of the market, right? If he gets a handful of interceptions or continues to be a high pass breakup guy with a decent coverage rating, and is relatively healthy, you're gonna have to retain that guy. You're gonna have to pay him over what 12, $13 million is a going rate for starting left cornerback at the top of their game, right? So that's what you got to mentally prepare for. I'm not saying he's the best in the league or anything like that. When you're talking about guys getting to an open market, that's where they start from, right? Because it's a supply and demand thing. All too often, people think that the contracts that are doled out in free agency are a matter of like what your production was, and that's a part of it, but really it's more about supply and demand. That's precisely why average quarterbacks like Ryan Tannehill get the contracts that they get. I mean, that applies to every position. It's literally just supply and demand. So, Griffin's he's gonna garnish that kind of salary if he keeps up what he's been doing. So, it'll be curious to see what they do with them for sure. I'm not ready to give up on Trey, but again, I think those if you want to get your best three out there it means that Dunbar plays nickel. Again, it doesn't mean that I don't think he's better than Trey Flowers at playing outside. Um, then again, I don't want to disrespect Ugo either, guys. Like, let's say he, I haven't really thought about that. I haven't really vetted that out. What if in preseason, um, you just can't take Ugo out of the nickel because he plays it so well? Um, if you're telling me that, then I would say, yeah, Derek and others, like some of the other people that aren't fans of Trey Flowers, um, then I would say, yeah, Dunbar would start over Trey, and then Ugo would be in the nickel, just because of the flexibility again. And like I said, Ugo can be your nickel or backup free safety. Like I think that was a clutch get for them, considering where they got him in the draft last year. So and they like him more than I think fans, both Trey and Ugo. I think they like both those players more than fans perceive, for sure. So um, I won't ramble too much on about the corner situation, but I think now that you have Dunbar, it's not as big of a need, obviously, in the draft. I still think you probably need to add another traditional outside corner or maybe one more traditional nickel to compete with Mahdi. Let's say they add another like nickel guy, like say a Michael Ohemudia from Iowa, a guy that I like. Um, if he was brought in to compete with Amadi for the nickel spot, that would tell me, yeah, Dunbar is probably going to be strictly competing for the right cornerback spot. So um, there's still a lot of information that we need to get after the draft, guys. So, but post free agency, um, that's kind of where I'm at. I know obviously free agency is still going on, but all the big names, all the large volume of contracts have already been signed. The big chip, as we mentioned, we're just waiting on Jadeveon, but we're gonna have to plan as though he's not gonna be around this year. We don't know what's gonna happen with that. So, uh, boy, those rumors though of the 2-year deal at the price that we were hearing, that sounds really appetizing. That would be a great value, I think, if they could get him back on a 2-year, 17-18 million dollar, or maybe even less than that, APY. That would be great, guys. That would be another, again, tip of the cap to John Schneider for sure. So I guess that sort of leads into a little bit of the draft talk now that free agency is sort of kind of cooling down. Um, what was I gonna say? So the league announced, I want to say a couple of days ago, about like how teams should address the draft with the coronavirus and everything being like virtual now. So one of the things that I heard was, well, they're allowing teams to do their war rooms at residential properties. So one of the things I heard that's going to happen is the Seahawks are going to move their war room from the VMAC to John Schneider's house, of all places. So I don't know how it's going to impact like the entertainment value of like watching the draft, but it's going to be really crazy to see like all these teams, um, like draft strategies, right? Because it's not just the war room thing; it's pro days have been shut down, and it's been such a big part of the evaluation process, right? Not just evaluating players, guys, that weren't invited to the combine or didn't do certain drills at the combine, but that's where teams really get an opportunity to get face to face, one on one, talk with each other, exchange information. One of the biggest like misconceptions is, teams want to keep all their draft secrets in house and not leak anything, and because the public is so in the dark about like teams' draft strategies or draft secrets, that also applies within the league, and that's not the case. Sometimes it's the case, but I would say more often than not, teams like to know what the others are strategizing towards because that allows them to plan better. It's in every team's best interest if everybody sort of knows who really likes who's planning on trading where the runs are going to be at certain positions. And teams get to do this at the combine when they talk with each other and pro days. That's why you see guys like John Schneider going to like a Josh Allen type pro day, because you need to know where big moves are going to be made, or you need to know which teams really like certain things with quarterbacks, because usually quarterbacks are the players that teams like to make big trades up or down for, usually up. But again, it's more in the interest of guys that or teams to know what other teams are thinking rather than keeping it in the dark. So without pro days, um, maybe they're just calling each other up on the phone, but I think it's going to be very interesting to see the impact. You would think with all the data that they have access to, and the tape that they have access to, their background checks, their interviews, they know way more than we do. But like I said, as a guy that pays attention to the draft every year, I'm super curious to see like what their strategy is. Being displaced from the VMAC, having to do it at John Schneider's house, not having pro days. Everything is kind of like up in the air. And I can't say it's a disadvantage for the Seahawks because every team's got to go through it, right? So nobody really has an advantage in this case. All teams have to figure out some pseudo strategy for this. And it's all happened within the last couple months. So it's definitely thrown uh, a kink in the chain, for lack of a better term. So if the hopefully they say the draft's not going to be delayed, so um, we really need that for sure, and I'm hoping that stays on track. But I won't revert back to that. I'm just kind of excited for it, but again, I'm also kind of worried, like, hey, maybe they don't get to do everything the same way, so maybe their draft strategy isn't as optimal as usual. But again, like I said, every team's got to go through it, so I guess I'm just more curious than anything at this point. But you know, positional need wise going into the draft, we mentioned it a little bit before. I think obviously without Clowney, 5 tech is our biggest need, and you're going to have Rasheem Green, former first rounder LJ Collier from last year, battling at the 5 tech spots. Uh, it's kind of light without Clowney, but again, the team likes those guys more than fans do. But still, you need to address that. For me, I think it would be cool to see a guy in the first round like Yetur Gross-Matos be drafted there. I love Bradley Anae from Utah as like a day 2 guy. I don't know if he's sort of like a fringe round 2, early day or early round 3 guy for me. And I know that the Seahawks have at least met with him informally at the very least at the combine. Super productive guy. He would fit the 5 tech role, like 265, 270 pounds. He's got a plethora of moves, and we'll in the future I'll do I think on the next episode I'll do some deep dives on profiles. I won't do that now, but just as kind of like an elevator pitch on Bradley Anae, he would definitely fit that 5 tech role. He's got a handful of moves. He's got a great spin move. He's got a great counter step. He's not super bendy at his size, but I think he's a guy that they would really like based on guys they've taken in the past. I'm definitely curious to see where he lands just in general, even if the Seahawks don't end up drafting him. He's a guy that had I think 14 sacks last year. Was a defensive captain for Utah, and Utah has had some great players the last couple of years. Like, Seattle drafted a couple of them last year with Cody Barton and Marquise Blair. So they had some pro prospects, and this guy Bradley Anae was the captain amongst those guys. So that sort of says something to me, right? About his character at least. So I'm curious about him and some other guys, but 5 tech's going to be your biggest concern. I think you still need to address Leo, but again, with Irvin and Mayoa, you can kick that down the road or later in the draft if you want. Jaron Reed allows you to kick defensive tackle into day 2 or day 3. I think you still need to sign a cheap veteran. I saw Davis tweet that yesterday. Still need one more defensive tackle, like a like a veteran, right? We talked about guys like Tony McDaniel in the past, an Al Woods type, cheap veteran run plugger that really helps bring that group along because you could start Reed and Puna Ford and probably be fine, but your depth after that is Nas Jones, Brian Monet, DeMarcus Christmas, who didn't get on the field last year. We didn't see Nas Jones on the field last year. That guy's just been a ghost, a complete mystery. I hope he's able to get on the field a little bit, at least this preseason, because he looked promising initially. So don't know what happened to him, but you need to add there the depth wise. It's just not a top priority. But I would say this, guys. I would say your top three priorities are probably 5 tech, offensive tackle, and that Leo defensive end spot as it stands. If you're talking about draft, right, the future, it's not just because, and I'll jump back and forth here, but with like tackle, let's take offensive tackle for example. Yeah, you signed Brandon Shell, you signed Ogwehi, but Shell probably has a better chance to start at right tackle or replace Ifedi, as we mentioned in the last episode. But I'm thinking more so along the lines of a long-term replacement for Dwayne Brown. You don't have that guy in house right now. It's not Jamarco Jones. I don't think it's Ogwehi. Shell's a right tackle guy that I think is, just a 2-year player. If I'm wrong about that, cool, but I'm pretty confident in saying that he's a short-term thing. So you need a long-term replacement for Dwayne Brown because I'm not trying to put bad juju on him or anything, but I think he's getting up there in age and he's starting to physically decline. He's still playing at a very high level. He's still your best offensive lineman on this team, but that's not saying much when you look at who's in that group right now. So you don't want to be in a situation where if Dwayne Brown's injured or he decides to retire before his contract is up, you don't want to be in a position with your pants down where you don't have a blindside tackle for a right-handed quarterback, right? You don't want to be in that position, especially when you're drafting at the back half of the first round every year. So like the Seahawks usually are. So it is a decent tackle class, as we've mentioned in the past, but I don't think they're going to do that in round one. Could they? Yeah, of course, anything's possible, but I just don't think, as it stands, that's going to be the top priority in the draft, guys. I think, if anything, that's a second round thing, where you could get maybe a Lucas Niang, who I'm a little bit higher on, but Austin Jackson, Lucas Niang, guys like that. I don't know if you guys watching our draft nicks, but I know a couple of you pay attention a bit, so maybe you're familiar with the names. Again, like I said, we'll do some more in-depth draft profile stuff in the upcoming episodes. But and then I would say, what did I say? The Leo position, yeah, we touched on that, but you need a long-term replacement there. It would be nice to see if they added another wide receiver. Philip Dorsett, I guess we didn't touch on that. Based on the amount of money that they gave him, I don't think I don't even think he's a solid slam dunk for the final roster, guys, based on the amount of guarantees that they gave him. I think he's coming in here to compete for a job. It's not like he's the incumbent wide receiver 3 by any means. I think you need to add another big body receiver too. Like Dorsett's a small guy. He's in that Lockett range. He's in that Ursua range where it's like, if Lockett goes down, you've got that hedge. But let's say DK goes down, you've got Malik Turner and David Moore still. That's a big drop off. And I like those guys more than most. But let's face it, like they need another big body, and you can't afford a significant free agent. We know that. So you're going to probably have to draft a guy, and again, that's a thick position in this class, but I just don't know. I think you can kick. I don't think that's an essential need right now. I think Russell Wilson elevates guys that are with lesser talent. I think you can get by on less when you have a quarterback like Russell Wilson. And it's not to say that I don't want them to be more explosive on offense or anything like that, or I don't want them to fix the offensive line. All those things, obviously, there's room for improvement everywhere, guys. But there's only so many things you can do inside the first 2 rounds or inside the top 100 where the meat of the draft is. After that, you're really hoping to get, sleeper pick hit, which they've been able to do in the past, but you can't bank on that, guys. So I think, like I've said in the past, the way I see the way they've handled free agency, they've set themselves up to be flexible, but I really think it's going to be a defensive heavy draft. Like, if they only draft a couple offensive players, it wouldn't surprise me at all. Not at all. I think it's going to be a very defensive heavy draft. So um, I'm looking forward to that. We'll talk more about receivers and offensive linemen, prospects. Like I said, let me know what you guys are most interested in hearing. Maybe the next episode we'll focus on just one position. That way we can deep dive a couple players. That way we have more time to spend on each position instead of like this format where I'm kind of jumping back and forth and just giving you these elevator pitches on certain guys that I like. That would be definitely pretty cool. So, the other thing I wanted to mention was, let's see, just going over my notes right now. Yeah, some people have been a little bit upset about like the lack of star power. I think that's the thing about Clowney, right? Is because the defense kind of sort of lacks star power right now. So everybody's focused on like, hey, can we get Clowney and Everson Griffin? But really, I think what you're seeing with the team is they're filling out depth right now. And I know that's not sexy, but I think depth is important for teams that are trying to make a Super Bowl run. Like I said, when we were talking about looking at the roster of the Super Bowl 48 team, it was thick, guys. It was thick with talent. So, I think what the team's doing here is adding veteran depth, getting back to their roots with making it competitive again. Just every position having competition, whether it's young guys, veterans. You can't have a superstar at every position, especially after your quarterback's paid. You've got to get creative with the way that you spend your cap. And I know when we started free agency, we all assumed because it looked like we had a bunch of cap space that we were going to be able to go after multiple superstars. The team has obviously told you by the signings that they've made that they're going to take that money, use it on volume, on depth, and then hopefully hit on younger guys. Hopefully turn the page to the next generation of Seahawks as they move guys out like, we're anticipating KJ Wright. This is going to be his last year. Maybe Britt. Guys that they've moved on maybe a little bit too early on in the past. They're turning the page to the next group. Guys like, Amadi potentially getting a starting position. Look at 5-Tech if we don't get Clowney back. You're probably going to have to draft the guy, and then you're going to have to let Rasheem Green and LJ Collier battle it out. Like, that sounds scary to us, but maybe they know something that we don't. It's just crazy. Like, to me, Phil Haynes is if BJ Finney doesn't start there, Phil Haynes is your best bet at left guard. I'm not putting Chance Warmack as a slam dunk starting left guard because he hasn't played football for a year. He took a year off, and he never panned out that well anyways. Like, he's just another guy that's. It's kind of crazy, but we talked about this before about the Seahawks like obsession with the 2013 class, particularly those first rounders. They're getting them all back, and Warmack's just another guy. He bounced around a couple teams, never panned out, but that's kind of what the Seahawks like to do. They like to take shots at guys and guys that got something to prove, guys that have like great traits that maybe didn't get a fair shake or battled injuries or just made mistakes for whatever reason. Their career didn't go the way that it was supposed to or the way it was projected to go, and they give them a second opportunity. That's been Seahawks MO. Guehi, same thing. Guy that was a first rounder that most people don't even know his name. Yeah, he was a first rounder when he got drafted, guys, and now here he is on his third or fourth team with Seattle, just battling to stay in the league another year. BJ Finney, I think that was a great signing. I think he's flexible to play center or guard. Offensive line. I know it's always like a big thing. And yeah, we didn't go get a Jack Conklin. Um, do I think we're going to spend a round one pick on a tackle? No, but I think they're fixing their depth first, and they're going to rely on young talent to emerge. I think Cody Barton is probably going to, if you cut KJ Wright, he's going to start over he's going to slide over to the will and start for KJ Wright. You could do that immediately day one. They're going to count on young guys, like I said, to step up. Um, Another low key thing I think they need to address, obviously, that they've been kicking the tires on is running back. Um, it's not a high priority by any means this year, but Chris Carson's going into a contract year. Both Carson Penny now have had significant injuries. They're probably not going to be ready for the start of the season. Um, I don't. I love Chris Carson guys, but I don't think you can pay running back in the modern day game. I love running the ball. I'm still pro run. I'm still very much a Chris Carson fan, but I'm all on the train that says they're easily replaceable. So, would I like to see Carson around? Sure, but I'm not going to pay him when this season comes up, even if he has a good year. And then with Rashad Penny, they draft him. It's so ironic with him. They initially draft him as an injury hedge because he had such a clean bill of health coming out of college. Never had injuries, started a bunch of games, super durable guy. And then ever since he's been here, he's been nicked up. And then now he had the significant knee injury. So even if you had Penny as your future starter for a season before his deal was up, I'm not saying it's a like I said, that's why I think it's a low key need right now, but more so as like an injury hedge because the position itself is already an atrocious one, right? Atrocious, if that's a word. It's a position that deals with a lot of attrition, even if you have guys that are relatively reliable, relatively durable. Um, they just get banged up, especially when you have power backs and you run as much as Seattle. Like those guys are asked to carry a big load here, so. Um, I don't think you're going to go after any of the big names like a Jonathan Taylor or Zach Moss or anything like that, despite them meeting with those guys at the combine. Um, I haven't really paid attention to late running backs, but, I would like to see them go after, guys they've met or guys they have a history with, like an Alex Collins, who I think got into a bit of off-field issues. He's kind of on a redemption path too after having a pretty decent season with the Ravens. I know they hit up Isaiah Crowell. I think he was most recently with the New York Jets, so he's kind of the same thing, a mold, one-cut power back that would fit in here with the inside zone, outside zone, power run game that Solari and Carroll like to run. I think he would be a good fit here. Um, you know, I don't know if you can afford the veteran free agent. You can't afford a veteran free agent at defensive tackle like an Al Woods type, but again, I'm anticipating a couple more cuts coming, guys, because budget's going to get really tight here. It's already tight. You've got a little bit of flexibility with $10.5 million, but you sign another guy and a $5 million defensive tackle, like it's going to cost for an Al Woods, a Tony McDaniel, Earl Mitchell type, like guys they've gotten in the past, and then you're down to $5 million. Now what are you going to do? You really can't afford running backs. You can't afford anything else. So they've done a majority of their work in free agency already. So, again, if they get Clowney back, anticipate a cut coming, whether that's KJ Wright or Britt. But then you've got voids to fill there. And I think they covered themselves. Like I said, you could slide Finney into the starting role without Britt at center. You could slide Cody Barton over to KJ Wright's spot if you cut him. By signing Dunbar, you got flexibility at the nickel with him or Amadi, and it allows you to wait on corner because I think this is going to be a decent corner class, particularly in that second wave of guys. And we know that Seattle's been able to do pretty good with what they've had. They've been able to take day three guys and make them um, been been able to make them um, starting starters in the league, rather, respectable guys, contributors. That's really the best word that I was looking for there. Um, yeah, so I don't know. Derek, you said let's hit on D and an OT first. Yeah, man, I'm there with you. I think if you spent your first and second rounders on those, either way, I wouldn't be losing sleep over that. I think that's how you got to do it. I think overall it's going to be a defensive heavy draft, like I said before. But if one of those selections in the top three picks is offensive tackle, I think that's something to get excited about. But like I said, I don't really care if it's right tackle or left tackle, because I think initially the guy could compete with for the starting right tackle position with Jamarco Jones, Brandon Shell, and then maybe after Dwayne Brown goes on, he could slide again. This theoretical rookie could then slide over to the left tackle spot in the future. So yeah, we're gonna do some deep dives on that, and I'm looking forward to that. Um, so Derek, you said it. Yep, if they draft a left tackle and want to sit him for a year to be Dwayne's prime, I'm fine with it. Yeah, I think that's the move, because I don't, you know, I'm not really counting on Cedric Ogbuehi to be anything. Nothing for over the span of his entire career leads me to believe that he deserves to be in the league outside of, and this is no knock at him. I'm not trying to sound like, and it sounds like I'm being extremely disrespectful to the man, but just objectively stating, nothing tells me other than his name value because he was a first rounder. Nothing leads me to believe that he should be in the league still. He's been banged up. He's not been able to be the starting left tackle in the moments where he didn't perform well. The Bengals ended up moving on from him for Andrew Whitworth, who was already older. Um, and then after Whitworth left to the Rams, he had one more shot at it, and he wasn't able to capitalize. So I'm not expecting that guy to be the incumbent starter just because he came to Seattle, and Seattle's has great coaches, and Mike Solari is able to revive the careers of guys like DJ Fluker. He was able to bring in Mike Upati and do pretty decent things with him. He was able to do good things with Jordan Simmons. He's had a relatively decent track record with unproven commodities so far. So, I know I'm sounding like I'm on the fence, wishy-washy about it, but I'm not going to count on Cedric Ogbuehi being in the future. Maybe Jamarco Jones is able to be the future right tackle. That would allow them to, that would be great, because that's what he played in college for one. That was his natural position in college for one, but then it would also allow them to, like I said, have the flexibility to focus on whether getting a left or a right tackle, as opposed to getting a guy that they just like because he has great traits, right? And then they move him to a different position like they always do, right? It's almost like whatever the position of the offensive lineman was when he was playing in college, if he gets drafted by Seattle, it means nothing, right? Because they're just going to bring him in here. They're going to teach him everything from left tackle or right tackle, guard, center, everything. And then where he lands, nobody knows. Like, Justin Britt came in, he played right tackle, then he was slid to guard, then he landed at center. It seems like, there are a couple guys that happened to. So, I just think the way it stands right now, your offense, hear me out. I know we want to be more explosive on offense. We want to be able to protect Russell Wilson. We focus as fans and guys that chase data, and we focus on like just scoring more points and doing all we can to support this valuable commodity, which is our $35 million quarterback in Russell Wilson. But I think the team sees that as like, well, because we have that quarterback, we're able to get away with a lesser offensive line or a lesser amount of weapons because this guy is able to overcome when the line breaks down with his athleticism or with his reaction time, or with his mental game. He's able to read defenses and go through his reads quicker and overcome some of the mishaps that the offensive line has, or he's able to elevate a lesser wide receiver like a John Brown or say a Malik Turner, who, let's be honest, guys, is probably not on most teams' final roster. He's just a guy that happened to be in the right place at the right time with the right quarterback in place, and when he got his opportunity, was able to do enough to impress the coaches that now he's the dirty work guy. Now he's your next Jerron Brown. He's going to be the slot guy when you're running heavy run plays. He's going to be blocking outside linebackers. He's going to be chipping those guys. He's going to be coming on drag play action routes or run fakes and stuff like that. Like Brian Schottenheimer has said about Jerron Brown, he's a guy that we like because he does the dirty work. That's Malik Turner. But honestly, Malik Turner is easily replaceable. He could be any guy. So, Wilson, it's a combination of Wilson elevates the guys that are around him, and some of these guys just being fortuitous that they're in the right place at the right time. I think I can't really project Dorsett as like a guy that is going to do a whole bunch for this offense. I think it would be cool. I think, again, he's a former first rounder that didn't quite pan out, that they're going to, probably get more than most teams have out of him just because this is a good situation for him. But what does that do for John Ursua? What does that do for the guys that you bring in? Because every time you bring somebody in, somebody else takes a hit. Like I've told you guys in the past, whenever you bring in a free agent or a superstar or you make a transaction, there's a sacrifice somewhere else, and that's what people tend to ignore. I'm not saying that's always a bad thing, but sometimes it is. Sometimes by bringing in somebody else, you block a guy. When you bring in a guy like Philip Dorsett, it's healthy for competition, but it absolutely tells me that Ursua isn't a slam dunk to have an upward tick in receptions. He's going to have to battle for that, which, again, is healthy, but it potentially blocks him. If you're an Ursua fan, or if you're a guy that wants to see him on the field more, you don't like the Dorsett signing because he's that type of receiver, undersized, shifty guy, slot guy that is going to come in here and battle for those reps, the same reps that Ursua needs. So, and like I've said before, guys, you need to get your guys on the field for them to make their mistakes. That's how guys learn. It's by making mistakes. So when people hate on Trey Flowers for getting burnt a couple times, or hate on Malik Turner because he dropped a couple crucial catches in the playoffs, that's fair. But yeah, those guys are replaceable, or those are guys that you can improve upon. But the team doesn't see it that way, like the fans do. The fans are way more cutthroat, I think, than teams are early on. They're willing to, at least this front office, Seattle I'm talking about, they're willing to let it simmer for a little while. I saw somebody in the comments earlier saying they're not going to give up on Trey Flowers. They kept Procise for 4 years. That was a spot-on comment, dude. Whoever you are, coronavirus with the K. They kept Procise for 4 years. Why would they cut Trey Flowers? It's the same kind of thing. They like that player more than the fans or public perceives. Like Trey is like one of Pete's teacher's pets, right? It just was like head over heels for him when he came in. Loved that he was a former safety. And just, it built, because it also makes him look good. I'm not saying he's egotistical about it or trying to flex that he was able to do something like that. But as a coach, that's got to make you proud when you're able to take a guy that played a completely different position in college and then switch him at the highest level of the game, nonetheless. And then he's able to start every single game from you from week one. that's invaluable. That's why Trey Flowers is a guy that they're not going to move on from early, guys. And yeah, you brought in Dunbar, but he's not a guy that's going to get cut. That's a silly move, in my opinion. Like, you're creating a void. Now you've got a guy that started 32 games plus for you with playoff experience. Maybe he's not a finished product right now, but you're not going to go out on the free agent market right now, guys, and find a sub 25, 26-year-old guy with that length and that direct experience with Seattle that started that many games. It just isn't out there. And you're not going to be able to go out and trade a guy or trade for a starting, they did it. They already did it. They did it with Dunbar. They got a great value, but for those who expected them to be super aggressive to replace Trey Flowers, no, this was the right middle ground. The Dunbar move was the right middle ground, in my opinion. They were never going to go after a guy like a Xavier Rhodes. They were never going to go after a big money guy. They were never going to trade for like a Bouye like Denver did, a Chris Harris Jr. like wherever he landed. I can't remember. Forgive me on that. But they were never going to go after a big name guy like that. And if you've been watching this front office for the last 10 years, you should expect that by now. They're usually not big players in that early round of free agency, and we saw that again this year. It was, where's the value? Where's the Philip Dorsetts? Where's the Greg Olsons? Where's the rehashes, the Ogbuehis, the Warmacks, the Bruce Irvins, the guys that they have familiarity with. Ben Simeoa, two guys they have familiarity with. Of all the guys highlighted in blue here, the biggest potential acquisition was Dunbar. And he's going to come in here and compete. It's not a slam dunk. I'm not saying it's not a slam dunk. He will make the roster. I'm not saying he's competing for a job, but I'm not saying he's for sure Flowers' replacement. I'm not for sure saying he's going to be the nickel corner. Do I think I've already given you my opinion on how I think that shakes out, but that's not a cop-out answer, guys, just because I don't tell you, like, yes, he definitely is the right cornerback because X, Y, and Z, or yes, he is the nickel cornerback because X, Y, and Z. It's fluid. I think that's exactly how the team views Dunbar. He provides flexibility in case Amadi or Flowers don't take their leaps. He's able to move around. Amadi's able to move around. Trey Flowers is not. He is an outside cornerback. He's a right outside cornerback. If that is not where he ends up, he's going to be on the bench. That's just how it is, in my opinion. It wasn't a lavish free agency, but I think, the team did, like I said, a good job of building up some depth. I think there's some potential guys. There's some guys here that have potential to stick around. They didn't really do anything crazy like they did in the past with who was the lineman from Jacksonville that they signed? Why am I blanking on his name? A couple years back when they were going after TJ Lang. Help me out here, chat. I'm just drawing a blank. Jokel. They didn't sign him to a long-term deal, but the amount of money they gave him for like what he was silly. And I think maybe that goes back to like negotiating out of desperation, and what the effect of that, what happens when you're in that position. You end up overspending. Thankfully, they didn't give a guy like that long-term guarantees, so I guess it wasn't too terrible a move, but I guess I can't think of one in recent memory because that's just their history on approaching free agency. They're never going to be super active in early day one. Now, they have been in the past had a tendency to trade like an early round draft pick for a big name, but they usually don't like to spend open market value for free agents. That's just never how they've been. So I don't know why some fans expect any different. Every offseason, it seems like people get excited about it because they are so focused on adding superstars And this year in particular, like I said, with as much cap space as they had, and then to get disappointed, it's like they're setting themselves up for disappointment. But the team has never, like I said, given them any indication that it'd be any different. So, um, it'd be cool. And again, I think not to like I'm bouncing around here. This is not structured at all. But um, one of the things I wanted to think about was like, or talk about rather, was the Warmack thing at left guard. He's going to go in there and he's going to compete with BJ Finney. He's going to compete with Phil Haynes and Ethan Posick. That's going to be a hot spot in camp. Um, if Britt gets cut, then I fully anticipate Finney being the starter at center. But that would then in turn, like let's go with that. Let's go with that scenario. Let's say Britt gets cut, Finney is the starting center. Then your left guard battle becomes Haynes, Posick, and Warmack. That's interesting to me. I'm pulling for Phil Haynes just because, like I've told you guys, I've been on record saying like not only do I personally like Phil Haynes, but like as a prospect, but I want internal guys to develop. I want Seattle to be able to. I want them to be able to develop the guys that they've drafted. I don't want them to have to rely on free agents. I don't want them to have to rely on older free agent stopgap guards. Those are good for 1, maybe 2 years max, but then you've got to like eventually get to a point, like I've said, guys, where your own guys get the starting gigs. And that's why I'm like, bringing in Chance Warmack's cool if he pans out, cool, but like, dang, it would be really cool to see Phil Haynes just take that job from day one, and then you have that guy on a rookie contract for however many years, 3 or 4 more years. I think it's 3 because he was a late round pick. Playing at a cheap rate. When we talk about that Super Bowl team, one of the keys to not only have it wasn't just the amount of like the stars aligning where you had all this talent at once. It was having all that talent at once, but they were all playing for cheap. If you go back and you look at that team, most of those guys hadn't been paid yet. So, if you're the type that wants to get back to having a super loaded team, you've got to play this depth game. You've got to be able to be willing to take a risk at playing young guys early. That's why I'm not ready to move on from Trey Flowers, and I see why the team values his experience. That's why I want Phil Haynes to be a starter. That's why I want Jamarco Jones to be a starter. That's why I want L.J. Collier or Rasheem Green to be a starter, or at least play a significant amount of snaps, because defensive packages have guys rotating all the time. So, regardless of whether he's a starter or not, have more snaps, be more of a contributor. I want your guys, your young guys, to be out there on the field. Cody Barton, like I've said in the past, if they cut KJ Wright for cap reasons, I understand objectively. It would hurt me emotionally because the guy's put on for the city for a decade. And he's been a really great player. It would hurt Bobby Wagner. That's those guys are like, Bonnie and Clyde. They've been through everything together. They're better together. They have great chemistry together. There would definitely be a change of energy in the room without KJ Wright there. All those things matter, by the way, to players, guys. But objectively, I also want to see Cody Barton get in there because he's on a rookie deal. He's not making millions of dollars. He's younger in his career. And I want to see that next era of Seahawks make their way into the starting role, or into starting roles. John Ursua, Ugo Amadi, guys like this over the last couple years that they've been drafting, get Marquise Blair. Boy, would it be great to see him be a at least a starting big nickel or something, as Bradley McDougald declines and you phase him out, then he becomes your starting strong safety. But Bradley's probably going to be here for at least another year. So Blair's not going to be a starting strong safety until his 3rd year. So now you've only got him on a rookie deal for, 1 or 2 seasons. So that's why I think Pete Carroll realized early on that not only is competition healthy, but taking the risks of starting young guys, even if the cement is wet, even if they're unproven commodities, it is value added because, again, getting all that talent on the field, you have to be able to let those guys get out there, make their mistakes, and then prove themselves as young players and grow as young players while they're still cheap. That's how you get a thick team. That's how you get depth. That's what allows you to go out and get veteran free agents that truly allow you to be that one player away team when you're talking about like teams that are splashy in free agency. The smart ones, that are one player away. That's what you want to be. You don't want to be the team like let's say like Miami, for example, where they're spending tons of money and their fans are super happy because their team is in breaking news every 5 minutes, signing a new guy to a big contract. But I can tell you right now, the Dolphins are going to suck again. They're going to probably get Tua or Herbert, and I like both of those guys as quarterback prospects, but they're not going to be immediately better just because they sign all these guys. And history shows that spending money in free agency doesn't mean anything. You've got to have a quarterback in place, you got to have a coach in place, and you got to be deep. I'm not saying what Miami did was illogical. They obviously have to, as a losing team, the only thing that a team like Miami can flaunt is like, hey, this is a cool city to live in for a young guy. Other than that, like what's the draw of going to play in Miami? They're terrible. So like you've got to lure these guys in by spending a little bit more money than market value. Better teams are going to offer less because they can sell the program, they can sell the coach, they can sell the development aspect. They say, hey, we're going to pay you a little bit less to come here, but what you're getting is more valuable in the long term because you're going to be able to take what you learn here and your production from here, go somewhere else and become a captain on that team, and really make an impact. But if you're a young player, an unproven player, a rookie, and you go into a bad team, you're set back already, especially if you're a quarterback. That's why quarterbacks bust more often than not, because they all have to go to bad teams, bad situations, and they're asked to put the entire franchise on their back. And it's too much to ask for most guys. We got lucky with Russell Wilson, but we also got lucky with Pete Carroll. We also got lucky with John Schneider. We were very fortunate. Not every team can do that. And to expect that is like super far-fetched. You can't expect that. So, anyways, yeah, free agency is kind of wrapping up. I don't think there's going to be a whole lot more moves. I'm still waiting on the Clowney thing, waiting on a few more cuts. We talked about that. I think an in-season player to look out for is Josh Gordon, for those who want another wide receiver. Again, I don't know what's going on with his suspension. I know it was indefinitely. I don't know the substance that he used this time. Hope he's getting healthy, but he's a potential guy that if they are able to reinstate mid-season, that Seattle, he's already been vocal about liking it here. Obviously, he showed flashes of having some chemistry here. I think he's exactly what the Seahawks would need, another big body wide receiver to go along with DK Metcalf, because everybody else is kind of just a guy or a dirty worker. They have specific roles, but everybody else is small. Like Tyler Lockett's a small guy. We know his role. But behind that, now we got Dorsett and John Ursua, who are both smaller guys. Outside of DK Metcalf, there's not another big body wide receiver, a true X, a true red zone threat. This team is going to have to rely on DK and hopefully the tight ends, which I think, by the way, we didn't mention that. That's probably one of the stronger, now that we've got 4 guys in-house, that's one of the stronger groups on this team if they're able to stay healthy. I think Russell Wilson's going to be super tight end friendly and DK Metcalf friendly in the red zone, guys. But I would like to see them, like I said, go after another big body receiver. I know I mentioned Ayuk. He's not super big, but maybe a guy like Pittman from USC as a day 2 or early day 3 guy. Early day 3 might be a disrespectful for a guy like Pittman. again, we'll get into more draft stuff in the very next upcoming episodes. Derek, we're definitely hitting DN and OT first. Then after that, we'll do something like corners and wide receivers, maybe skill position type stuff. Looking forward to that. Let me loop back and answer your question. You said, does Jones compete at left guard? I don't think so. I think you're gonna see him. I could be totally wrong, dude. I don't know. I don't have inside info on that. I think what you want to see him do is compete at right tackle with Brandon Shell right now, because you really only have 4 true tackles on the roster, and I want to see. It's my personal bias. I want to see him. I know he did well at guard. I know some other guys in Seahawks Twitter sort of view him as a better fit for guard, but I would like to see him get a crack at right tackle, which was again his natural position coming out of Ohio State. My guess at this point in time is Brandon Shell has probably got the inside track to get that job, just because of the experience that he's had there, and the tape that I've seen is he's pretty decent there. He's a decent. I know you've looked at the PFF grades. He's pretty decent at pass protection, and that's something that this team desperately needs. They need to. That was a clear. Variable on the guys that they brought in. They were all a little bit better at pass protecting. Shell, Finney, Warmack, Ogwehi, even if they had limited snaps over the last couple of years, all of them seem to be a little bit better in pass protection than run blocking, which goes completely against the grain, goes opposite of the profile for the Solari guys. So I think Shell has an inside track, but again, we'll see. We'll let competition play out. I'm not ruling out Jones at left guard, but I think you've got so many guys there right now that you just put Jones at right tackle and you let Haynes, Posick, and Warmack battle for that left guard spot. And Finney too. I think Finney should be included in there, but I'm mostly keeping him at center right now because I'm anticipating something happening with Britt. Whether it's a restructure or him being cut to free up cap to sign a Clowney or a Griffin or something like that. I think they've obviously hedged themselves, and a bunch of people like Finney, all of the Steelers community seems to have liked him. They didn't want to see him go, but they had cap issues of their own. They were one of the teams that had the tightest cap. They had to cut a bunch of people, and one of those guys was B.J. Finney. He would have been likely a guy they kept around if they had more money. So this was another come up for Seattle, taking advantage of another team that didn't have their financial ducks in a row, so to speak. And they've definitely hedged themselves at center between tendering Joey Hunt, who, again, we don't need to repeat what we said about him and how he did last year. I think he's a better football IQ than a physical talent, but he knows how to play the position. You've got Posick, who that was his natural position in college, and now you've got B.J. Finney, who has pretty decent tape at center, has experience at it. I was listening to 710 ESPN earlier, and they had an old O-line coach, Howard Mudd, on there, and he was talking about how he knew B.J. Finney, and he had a relationship with Mike Munchak, who had experience coaching B.J. Finney, and they both were just absolutely head over heels for that. So B.J. Finney seems to be like a potential, at least from the opinions of coaches or former coaches or people in the know that coach O-line. He seems to be a guy that's like a diamond in the rough, a sleeper, so to speak. So I'm curious to see where they fit him. But personally, I just think he's a center hedge. Could he compete at left guard? Sure. Ultimately, you want to put your best 5 out there, but I want to see Phil Haynes there, man. Maybe I'm biased. That's why I've got him in the front at left guard right now. But and this isn't really like a hard depth chart. Don't take anything from this. I'm just kind of moving guys around as the news breaks and as I kind of project. But that's my opinion on Jones. I didn't mean to ramble too much more on that. So we'll get to what everybody's been waiting for, the Amazon gift card. But just appreciate everybody who followed, by the way, on this. Like, regardless of the giveaway, regardless of whether you come back. Like Mr. Achiever, I don't think you are even like in Seahawks Twitter or a Seahawks fan. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think you're just another streamer, a small streamer like me, trying to grow his channel, right? So I appreciate you stopping by, man. I appreciate you engaging in the chat. Appreciate you following everybody from Seahawks Twitter. I appreciate the support. Like I've said in the past, this is kind of like a new format that nobody's really tapped. Everybody's kind of like doing YouTube live or doing just straight audio podcast form. So I've kind of tried to combine my gaming streaming and my football endeavors and my hobbies into one, and that's kind of where I got the idea with just chatting on Twitch. So appreciate everybody following and supporting, whether you're watching this live right now on Twitch or you're catching the replay on YouTube. Appreciate the support, guys. So we're gonna switch over to the intermission screen, and the spin wheel is gonna come up, and I'm going to switch over real quick. And all right, here we go. The people that, just so you know, the names on the board were for people who retweeted the pinned tweet and then followed the Twitch channel. That's what you had to do to qualify. If that message wasn't clear enough, I'll make sure to do that in the future, guys, so I get everybody. But I'm pretty sure I got all the names from everybody who retweeted and followed the channel. Some of the people reached out and said they didn't want to be included in the drawing. They just wanted to support. I appreciate you guys as well. Just the same. They just wanted to support the channel, but asked not to be included in the gift giveaway. So again, without further ado, let's get this going. All right. Who's it gonna be? Who's it gonna be? All right, that's Patton, the Patton. Yo, Patton from Seahawks Twitter. Yo, congrats, man. $150 coming your way for Amazon, Amazon e-gift card, dude. I appreciate your guys' support. We're gonna be doing giveaways probably every quarter. If you guys want to do other gift cards or physical stuff, like, you know, whatever, AirPods, jerseys, I'm all ears for whatever. But I just figured for the first one, just because people can't really go do physical shopping right now, e-gift card would be the best way. And everybody's on Amazon, man. They're running the world right now. So I figured that would be the best one. So Patton, congrats. Everybody else, sorry. We'll get you next time for sure. Yo, it's been a good episode. I'm excited to keep doing this for you guys. I'm excited that there's more interaction in the chat. I'm happy that people actually give a crap to like chat and just care about my opinion, man. This is cool, taking it to a new platform. So I'm gonna follow. If I haven't followed you back, I'll definitely do that. Dark Soldier, I appreciate you joining. Appreciate everybody joining the stream. Appreciate the support, guys. I don't mean to blabber too much on, but we'll catch you guys on the next episode. I think we'll do defensive ends and offensive tackles. Let's go with that, Derek. Let's do that on the next one. We'll deep dive a couple guys. If you're on Twitter, follow me at Cytoplasm. Let me hide this really quick. If you guys aren't following, here's my socials on Instagram. Twitter's where you can hit me up on anything football related, Seahawks in particular. You know, I appreciate the follows and subs and whatever, depending on what the platform. I appreciate you guys. So just hit me up. But yeah, DM me or hit me back on Twitter. We'll talk about, hit me with your players. If there's specific guys that you want me to bring up on the next stream to go deep dive on, hit me up, Derek, Mr. Achiever, whoever you guys are. Even if it's like not Seahawks, even if your team is like, you know, someone else. I had some people that were on here that are Saints fans. My boy Ryan, he's an Eagles fan. You got other people on here that, you know, are fans of other teams. I'm down to talk. like let me bring up my draft. So here's my mock that I'm working on. Oh, I'm not on my live screen. Here's the mock that I'm working on right now. We could talk about guys that I've slated. If you hate it, um, if you hate the player that I got mocked to you, then let's talk about it. If you like it, let's talk about it. If you disagree with my positional rankings, it's all fun and games, man. Who cares? Like if anybody thinks they got the draft nailed, whether they've got sources or they don't, or they've been studying the draft for 1 or 10 years or however long, man, quit playing yourself. The draft is fun, but pretending like you got an answer for everything or that you know more than the next guy is just whatever. So I'm down to just completely blow these rankings up or talk about whoever you got in mind. But man, I'm super excited for the draft coming up. We need it, guys. We need something for sports right now. It might sound selfish because I know everybody needs to stay safe right now and do their job social distancing. But again, I might take some heat for saying this, but I'm so happy they didn't push the draft. So happy they didn't push the draft out. We definitely need that right now as sports fans. We're starving for content. It's just crazy right now. I hate baseball, and even I miss opening day baseball right now. I don't care as much about. I would say I don't hate baseball, but those who know me in real life, like I'm not a huge fan. Like I'll pay attention to the Mariners the first couple months, and then I'll grow cold on it. I might listen to a game here and there on audio just to pass the time because I like listening to baseball games for some reason more than I like watching them. But I miss that right now. I miss not having March Madness, like not having college basketball. Like March Madness is huge. Like I'm from Tucson, Arizona. The U of A basketball is like ingrained in my upbringing. So not having college basketball or March Madness is like it just feels weird, right, man? So we definitely need something, man, and we'll do more leading up to the draft. D Downs, appreciate you joining the stream, man. You said we should do a live stream for the draft. Maybe we can do that. Maybe we can do that at least the first round. I'll let you guys know on that. If you guys are interested in that, then yeah, maybe we could do something like that. Maybe I'll bring in somebody from Seahawks Twitter just to have a little bit more interaction. That way I get tired of hearing myself talk, man. So I appreciate you guys chatting and interacting, but I definitely need to start lining up some guests for future streams. So maybe we'll get somebody like Griff at C Mike Spin Move, Matty Brown, those guys over at Seattle Overload. If you guys don't follow them, check out Seattle Overload. They do a great job breaking down X's and O's. All my Beast Pod family, appreciate you guys. Maybe we'll have some of them on. And then if you're just a gamer, you don't really care, and you're just into like gaming streams, I'm also going to be doing that too. So maybe we could do some Madden runs, Halo. I'm a big Apex Legends player. I'm down to stream Animal Crossing. Man, that thing's been taking up all kinds of my time lately. And it's kind of silly because it's at first glance it seems like a childish game, but I'm hooked on that right now. So, anyways, that about wraps it up. Congrats to Patton. Appreciate everybody for the support. Looking forward to doing the next one. We'll see you guys. On the next episode. Take care.